Hello, basketball fans. DC Hewitt here for Fantasy Basketball Analyzer. And I'm welcoming you to the Week 7 breakdown video where we're going to go through the schedule, talk about some ads, just some interesting notes that we see coming up. Before we dive into the schedule, though, I want to mention a couple of news things around the league. One is that it looks like Memphis is actually going to get to play the Spurs tonight as of recording, Saturday, which is exciting for a couple of reasons. It means Memphis gets to play, which they haven't played in like 5 or 6 weeks. Weeks? No, games. Feels like weeks, but games is more accurate. They haven't played 5 or 6 games. So if you want to give a look, Xavier Tillman might be interesting again. I was getting questions about him last week, but they had, very few games, so it wasn't going to be worth it. But he's only rostered in 7% of leagues. So if you need a guy, I would give him a look, but be ready to cut him. You want to stay on Daily Change League because if everyone's back, Clark and stuff like that, he might lose some minutes, but I think he's rosterable. I think he's usable. And the big news, kind of buried the lead there, Derrick White is listed as healthy. He's going to be back in that game for the Spurs. So he's available in about 37% of leagues last I checked. So go check and make sure you're not in one of those leagues. You get Derrick White. Keeping with the news, but sticking to some schedule stuff. Want to take a look. The league actually made some changes to this week. So because Washington missed so many games, Washington went from a 2-game week to a 4-game week for this coming week 7. So they pulled a couple of games up, shuffled around Portland and Charlotte's schedule to make it work and push back a matchup they had. So that's good that it balances. But when we talk about the back-to-backs, unfortunately, it means there is a back-to-back and Westbrook probably sits. But it's a lot better than having 2 games. And we're talking about the schedule. Let's go take a look at our defensive efficiency and pace to figure out who we want to attack. So if we look at the pace and defensive metric, we bring them together for the average. And what's interesting here, now that we're 6 weeks in, for the first time, the usual suspects haven't changed. The numbers have changed for it. Maybe whose pace went up and down and stuff like that. But right now, our top 5 and bottom 5 are the exact same teams as last week, which means now we really can start operating a little bit on those priors. Do we think Memphis is going to stay all the way down, as one of the teams really to fear? Probably not once they're back to full strength, but they're a good team. Cleveland's rising up. New York's probably not going to be at the very bottom. Like, their slow pace is helping them stay down there, but the Knicks are not the best defensive team in the league, even if the numbers are bearing that out now. Some shooter regression back to the mean. The guys will start hitting some more three-pointers that they haven't been hitting against New York, and they'll kind of inch. But this really does give us a feel. I mean, Sacramento, Chicago, Washington, Minnesota, Portland, those being the teams to attack, yeah, that makes sense. That's going to hold. Golden State, Oklahoma City, Brooklyn being there, yeah, like all of those being the top 8 most desirable matchups make a lot of sense. Pelicans creeped up there, Milwaukee, they'll probably go down. But so this is kind of our usual sense now that you'll be able to look at and then apply it to the schedule. So let's apply it to the schedule. When we're looking at the schedule this week, most of the teams have 4 games, which is great. No one's got a 2-game week anymore, like I mentioned, because Washington changed. So you can look at the matchups. The most easy matchup week is actually New York. The Knicks get to play Chicago twice, then Portland and Miami. So they get a pretty good run there. But Oklahoma City also has a decent run if you're looking at it. Houston is a little bit lower. Their defensive efficiency has been ticking up. But they play Houston twice. They play Minnesota twice. Obviously, playing Minnesota twice is great. Play Houston, maybe it's a little iffy. Like the Wall-Oladipo matchups, like the tandem has improved that defense a bit. So that could be a little interesting there. But they're not playing on back-to-backs. So you can't count on there being rest on the Houston side for the Oklahoma State really take advantage. But if you're really looking to attack teams, that's where I'm looking. And if we're looking for streamers, and we'll talk about it as we switch over to back-to-backs, but the best team to have your streamers from is Utah, which unfortunately doesn't give you a ton of options, but they're playing on all the off days. So Tuesday and Thursday, there's only 6 and 5 games. So if you're in a daily change leagues, that's your best chance to get some people in there. And then Sunday, there's only 5 games as well. Utah's schedule, if you look at it, hits all 3 of those sweet spots. So that's really where if you only got one streaming spot, that's where you're going to want to look for someone like probably Joe Ingles. That's going to be, widely available for me to recommend. He's going to get you threes, he'll get you assists, and he's going to get you good percentages. I mean, he probably won't get you any free throw percentage at all. But if he takes some because it's so rare, he should be solid. Switching over to the back-to-backs. Here's where, sometimes they're good, sometimes it's a worry. So let's run through the worries first. Brooklyn's got a back-to-back. I don't know if they're going to be resting Kyrie or KD. You just want to take a look at that. It's later in the week, and they only have 3 games. So if you're in a weekly lock leagues, you still probably play your stars because it's a 3-game week and you don't want to like bench KD for the whole week. But it could end up being a 2-game week, so just be on the lookout, right? I just touched on this, but Houston has a back-to-back right in the middle of the week. They've got OKC, Memphis. So if they're going to rest guys, you don't know which side it's going to be. I was talking about it for the OKC impact, right? But Houston's got Wall. They got Oladipo now. They've got Gordon. They've got a lot of vets that need to be rested just to make sure these like lingering injuries don't recur. So one of them, they're probably going to go down a game there, but that still gives them a 3-game week. You probably want to use them. Eric Gordon in particular, I still think you should look and try and add him. He's rostered in 57% of leagues. And not only is it like worth it for this week, even if he probably rests one, but Houston has the best remaining schedule for what we know so far. They play 4 games every single week, except for the short week they'll come up in the All-Star break. So we're talking looking like over the next 5 weeks, they have the most remaining games at 18. The second place team right behind them is Houston. In fact, I have a graphic I can quickly show here and show you what we're looking at for the rest of it. So if you're looking at picking up guys, Houston and Minnesota for this next stretch is worth picking up. Obviously, we don't know what the rest of the schedule is going to look at like, both because they haven't released Section 2 and because of COVID game cancel and movement. But like, just to keep this in mind, if you're picking someone up for a weekly streamer, this doesn't matter. But if you're picking up someone like Eric Gordon because I'm saying, hey, I think he's going to be valuable all season, then this is part of his values, that he's going to get more play time, assuming he doesn't have a lingering injury that sits. All right, back to the back-to-backs. Next team up is the Clippers. So they've got a back-to-back to start off the week, Brooklyn, Cleveland. We don't know if they're going to be resting. Maybe not, because the guys were just, the big guys, PG and Kawhi were out because they were on the health safety protocol. They are back now. So maybe they won't rest, but if they do, it's right at the start of the week. It's worth noting that because they're back now, a lot of people were running out Reggie Jackson last week, and I hope you did, and good for you, but I'd be done with it. Like, that's someone you can cut ties if you're trying to pick up, Joe Ingles or someone to stream for Utah. That's where to cut ties and go for that. And then the last one, we already touched on it, but Washington has a back-to-back, so Russ will probably be resting. He said he's feeling good, that, he's getting past the Kawhi thing, but he was sat last year in back-to-backs. I know it was a different team and everything, but I still expect that to continue. So Russ probably gets a 3-game week, even though the Wizards get a 4-game week. All right, if I can update this grid to talk about the streamers, I talked about it that Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday was the most of our desirable matchups. So if we highlight the teams that are playing on at least Tuesday and Thursday, here's where you're going to be able in your daily change leagues to attack the streamers. So if I run through these teams, right, the Jazz have the best one, and I already kind of mentioned it. Joe Ingles is probably my recommendation there. Rostered in 37% of leagues. He'll get you threes, assists, and percentages. Portland's got a pretty good week overall. They've got 4 games. They get Washington and Philly on those low-volume days. So I mentioned Rodney Hood last week. He's back. Maybe Trent. I think those guys are both worth a shot, and because they've got a 4-game week, it's streamable. I would give both those guys a look depending on what you have. I'm not cutting a ton for it. Memphis, I talked about him. Xavier Tillman, only rostered in 7% of leagues, and they're playing on those off days against Indy and Houston. So if you get Xavier Tillman, you could plug him right in there. Golden State Warriors, I don't really have a recommendation. I tried. I looked. I was like, Kevon Looney, Eric Pascal, Bozeman. No, I just don't. Golden State's got the good matchups, but I think you're playing the guys that you have, and there's no one widely available that I'm recommending for this. So those are the teams that have like the best streaming for this week. A sneaky little move if you happen to be watching this on Saturday right now. For Minnesota, Anthony Edwards just got the start. Now, there's a good chance that was because like they were without Naz Reid and they didn't have a backup center and they had a shuffle roster, right? They're shorthanded. It might not stay. But Anthony Edwards started, played decently well. He's rostered in 44% of leagues. He has a back-to-back this Sunday rolling into Monday. So if you could scoop him up now, you're going to get to play him, a little into each week. A little bit of warning, Anthony Edwards is right in that Cole Anthony range where if they get the ball a lot, they're going to shoot a lot, and I think they're going to have really bad percentages. So he might really seek your percentages because these guys are just going to go. And if Anthony Edwards is starting and getting more time, that's going to have a bigger impact. But he's valuable, and if you pick him up, you might even be able to flip him. 44% rostered. I think it's worth a move if you're looking for a streamer. Grab him Sunday and Monday, and then just see how he's doing. Maybe you ride it for the rest of the season. Maybe you move on from it. Like I mentioned, Minnesota has the second best schedule for the next stretch here. They play 4 games every week here leading up to the break. So if you grab him and hold him for a while, you could probably ride him. The opposite of someone to ride, I think Alec Burks is on the list. I'm probably ready to part ways with him. You don't have to drop him. It's not like, oh God, he's the plague. But I mentioned New York having a really favorable week this week, right? Because they get to play Chicago twice, and Portland. So if you got Burks, I would hang on to him right now. You can use him this week. If he gets a good game here, I'm ready to move him right away. So I think Quickly's good. Quickly's a roller coaster, right? You could pick him up. He's rostered in 29% of leagues, so he's widely available. I think Quickly is a good player, but you are getting up and down games for sure. I think that he's going to cut into the minutes at the guard spots either way that it gets worked out. And so Alec Burks might be the guy who's odd man out. If it's a good week and you got him, you play him here and you get ready to package him. You know, you're not going to get that much for him on his own, but if you could put him in a different deal, they've only got 3 games next week. You want to work that deal during this week and try and part ways. Otherwise, you might be looking at some bigger name to replace him. You know, if Eric Gordon's out there, I think I'd rather Eric Gordon just pick him up over keeping on Burks. And that'll do it for this video. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to hit the like button for me. Subscribe if you haven't so you keep getting the videos. I'll be back tomorrow to do the waiver wire video. If it's already out, I will link it right here. If it's not, I haven't made it yet. Beyond that, go out and win your week.